Hello, I'm Dr. Deborah Cibelli. I teach art history at Nicholls State University, and it's been a pleasure to help to organize the Jubilee Arts and Humanities Festival presentation on Chauvin, the sculpture garden by Kenny Hill, located at Chauvin, Louisiana, in Chauvin, Louisiana. We put together a symposium of multiple views on the garden that included Professor Dennis Sipiorski from Southeastern Louisiana University. He was joined by Karen Eberhardt, who took over 100 photographs that are now part of a book on the garden by Kenny Hill. It's called Heart of Fact, one of the references that Kenny made in the garden, an inscription on the pathways through the garden. And we had both presented papers, Dennis Sipiorski and Karen Eberhardt as one team, and myself as another person at a conference in New Orleans at Southeastern College Art Association conference. And we heard we had a lot of questions when we came back to our respective colleges. What was the presentation about? How would we interpret Kenny's garden? So it seemed worthwhile to try to recreate that symposium on the Nicholls campus.
The garden, which was composed of over 100 cement figures on the bayou, depicted not only contemporary culture but visions of salvation, or the road to salvation, that Kenny created through visions in his own mind, I guess you'd say. A lot of these visions incorporated Kenny in the pathway through this salvation quest, and I think the major concern for the visitor is it is your opportunity to find salvation with Kenny's help on pointing the way, and that's what the garden has a lot of images related to.
What would you say is your favorite piece of work there at the garden?
I guess I'm drawn to a few key images, but probably to me the most compelling is the image of Kenny Hill on the tower with his face in black and white. He's upheld by the angels, and if you look at the angels, certainly before a few of the storms, they had fluorescent light bulbs, these round circular light bulbs as halos. Very fragile, and in many cases they have not always survived at the garden, but Kenny was, I think his goal was to actually have electrical wiring where these halos would come to light. So for me, the fact that he's there, there's a certain ambiguity in his face being half white, half black, that the angels are lifting him up as if to save him. To me, that's one of the most interesting, and it's also part of a compendium of imagery that's more historical and less religious, where you have musicians playing the saxophone and trumpets that seem part of a Mardi Gras parade, and also soldiers and boats, and so a number of different kinds of images are brought together in that one space.
Which sculpture do you think spoke more about Kenny himself?
For me, the image when you first enter the garden from Bayou Road and he holds his hand to his heart, the bleeding heart, the reference to heart of fact in the inscriptions on the pathways, enter into my heart, that one to me sets the tone for the garden, because it is a self-portrait, and it also shows you how personal that space may have been for him. It may relate to incidents in his life, but also maybe a spiritual journey that he had and explored within these sculptures of the garden. To have a space that took so much energy, and that a project that was sustained over a number of years, I think that's a great metaphor for life, and particularly within the realm of the arts. It's an incredibly lonely path sometimes. You have to work on projects for many, many years before you see things come to fruition. So that lonely journey, that vigilance, that confidence in yourself, that Kenny had it to sustain that project, and I think that's what students may need in the visual arts In our history, scholarly projects can be a long road and journey, part of a long journey and process, and so can many very ambitious sculptural projects, painting projects, within any medium, really.